So there was a point when I was playing Hedon Bloodrite. Yes, it's Hedon, not Hedon, as I was saying in my last video. I thought it was pronounced like hedonism, which can also be pronounced like hedonism, so I found out the hard way that I was saying the game's name the wrong way the entire review. I know, whatever, make fun of your dad all you want, kids. I still bought that goddamn popcorn for you, and I can take it away if I want to. This is my house, and your mom's not home to spoil you, so sit up straight, make sure you drink some water. Where was I? Oh, right. So I was playing Hedon Bloodrite, and I was stuck in this series of underground ruins, and I thought I had soft-locked the game. You have to switch the power between two differently colored doors to access certain areas of the ruins, but I realized I could open a door, switch the controls, and then slip through before the door closed itself. Problem with that was that I then couldn't get back to the switch mechanism, so I was stuck with needing to navigate deep waters that offered no chance to come up for air. But I hadn't completed the diving suit I was attempting to patch together in order to do so. But I happened to have 2 rings that negated elemental damage in my inventory, each one lasting around 120 seconds before fading off, so I took a chance that would lessen any damage from drowning while underwater. And wouldn't you know it, the rings made it so I didn't even lose oxygen underwater at all. So that was great, but it was on a time limit, which wasn't great. But under pressure, underwater, I'm usually pretty good at getting things done, so I managed to explore the entire area within those 4 minutes the rings provided me. I fought off the warlock witches swimming around, found a way through an airlock, found a piece of machinery that would make it so I didn't have to switch between door colors, and they would both work from here on out. But I still didn't have a way to get back through the door I'd had to slip through. I was utterly convinced I'd soft-locked the game, so I went back, reloaded a save made before the door switch, re-entered the diving area without sealing myself off, and found a key that would open a path which would give me a back door around to the switch mechanism. Going through that back door also gave me the final part of the diving suit I needed, so not only had I not soft-locked the game, but I'd actually cheesed my way through a difficult part of the hub, and had only failed in doing so because I'd missed a key that I still could have gotten had I not reloaded my game. And that's what Hedon Bloodrite from developer Zan is in a nutshell. A massive, giant game of where does this piece go and how do I make it fit, followed by the relief and reward of exuberance with each new aspect of the world opened and riddles solved and enemies slaughtered. This game is much, much bigger than the first Hedon game. In fact, by comparison, I'd go so far as to say that Hedon is to The Hobbit as Bloodrite is to Lord of the Rings.
Oh shit.
I just can't figure out where to begin talking about this game. It's so fucking huge. It's a lot bigger than I expected. Go ahead and laugh it up if you want to, but the last time I played a game of this size and scope was Skyrim. Calling Hedon Bloodrite the retro shooter Skyrim feels both apt and a disservice all at the same time. Where Skyrim is a massively open world meant for meandering, Bloodrite takes all of the missions and quests of a game that size and boils them down into a linear experience. All killer, no filler. Earlier this year, I played through Daikatana, which I figured would be a fair little 7, maybe 9 hour game that turned out to be closer to 14 hours long. After playing the first Hedon, a game that was 7, maybe 9 hours long, I chuckled when I read that Bloodrite was closer to 16 hours in length. And yeah, my in-game time was 16 and a half hours, but in real life, Bloodrite lasted 23 fucking hours. I have 23 fucking hours of footage to sift through for this review, and if the idea of scrolling through all of that is intimidating, imagine actually playing through the entire game. I didn't even find everything. There was an orc lancer trapped in a painting who wanted me to find a way to get her out, and I'm assuming there was because it popped up as a side quest in my journal. And there was a random switch in the Crimson Salt Mines that required a key I could never find, which didn't matter because I didn't actually need to use that switch to progress the game, so there's at least 2 things off the top of my head which I didn't do that still could be done, which would probably add at least another 2 to 3 hours onto my playtime. Saying that this game is expansive and exhausting is literally the understatement of the year. Hedon Bloodrite is absolutely one of the deepest, non-sandbox PC games I have ever played, as twisted and convoluted as Hexen, and thoroughly and utterly as satisfying. Okay, I'm going to try to not get too Tolkien here with this review. I'm not doing any more 2-part reviews this season, so rather than go step by step, I'm going to treat this video like you've already watched my review of the first game. And you should, because this game makes no sense whatsoever if you haven't played the first. Bloodrite picks up right where the first Hedon, retroactively retitled Crystal Heart, left off, which does add some forgiveness for the abrupt cliffhanger ending of that game. Zan, our half-orc, half-demon protagonist, wakes up after being sucked through a portal with the primary antagonist Nithriel, now in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar things about her. Wandering around, she quickly gets a reintroduction to the world and the weapons, partly for her benefit and partly for the players, and then gets back together with her sisters in the Orc Iron Division. From there, it's a blistering campaign as the Orcs seek revenge against the cultists and demons who aided Nithriel in the invasion of their home, and they're preparing a strike of their own against the dark forces. The setup is simple, the players get put in place pretty quickly, and the story is enveloping and kept my attention throughout. I said in my previous review that I have a hard time keeping up with high fantasy stuff, especially when we get a lot of names of people or places that are important but we never actually get to see. This time around I felt like I had a far easier time of things. There's certainly more characters to interact with, names to remember, but the visual distinctness of the characters made it easier to discern who was who, and therefore anytime anyone else mentioned specific names, I already knew what was up. And it's good stuff too, real meaty shit. Bloodrite is split into 2 acts, and essentially 2 major hubs. Act 1 starts Zan off gently with 2 individual levels. One, mostly based around getting your feet wet with exploration and combat, and the second, designed to demonstrate what you'll be in for the rest of the game. It's a huge mansion that you'll have to run around and scan for clues, both in the building and on the grounds. And where the first mission drew me in immediately, this one threatened to bounce me out. I figured we were in for some bullshit puzzles and huge levels built to spread things out, but I soon learned that the game was asking me not to just traipse back and forth unfairly, but to learn that this was a living, breathing world where things would change after unlocking puzzles or discovering items. Make a discovery, backtrack to areas you've already been, and see what happens. Enemies will pop up, creating holes in the environment, which you can then move through to new areas, discover more puzzles, and also utilize the quest items you've just picked up. The progression of the exploration is so smooth, so good, that even when I was lost and confused, I was still invested, understanding that there was something that had changed, but that I just hadn't figured it out yet. But then after these 2 levels, we get our first hub, which becomes the gold standard for the rest of the game. Here we have the Iron Division camp, where orcs and minotaurs and dwarves have banded together in their attempt to stop Hill's forces. Talking to other characters really made me connect with the struggle, highlighting the desperation of this motley crew, realizing that their entire world is actually at stake here. Zan is tasked with multiple objectives as we explore and zoom about, unlocking new smaller levels within the hub itself, which after exploring, loop back to the main hub with shortcuts that make going back and forth a lot easier. And you'll need it to be, as developer Zan has performed a feat of wizardry with their level design. Everything is so intricately and intimately connected that I not only impressed myself with my ability to pathfind throughout the game, but I was simultaneously marveling at how the slow reveal of the connections between each puzzle and area would create a beautifully woven tapestry of combat and exploration. Act 2 takes place in an even bigger hub, which demands even more exploration and puzzle solving and vicious combat in ways that I didn't expect the game to take me. At the end of Act 1, half-blood Zan chases down Nithriel's patron, the Blue Baron, who is a Lovecraftian entity that uses mind blasts. He has lesser priests, which you'll have to face throughout the game, but the Baron is the big bad fucker who we'll come to love to hate. So we chase down the Baron, literally leaping across hell ships on a lake of lava, trying to catch Nithriel as well, and end up crashing onto the shores of hell. But entrance to hell proper is strictly reserved for those of demon blood. The Iron Division have been hoping for this moment, but Zan is only a half-blood demon, and in order to emburden her heart with enough sin to pass for full demon, she'll need to impress 5 demon primarchs and undergo the blood rite.
Roll credits.
Act 1 is what you'd expect from a sequel after playing the first game. Act 2 is an entirely new experience that elevates it even further. Wild, creative, innovative, experimental. The sheer fortitude to undertake such a creation demands to be recognized. But even more so than that, developer Zan did not just put forth passion and dedication into the production of the game, they absolutely nailed the execution of it as well. Each corner turned, every tunnel scoured, secrets discovered, and items acquired. There was something new and exciting and jaw-dropping that was waiting for me. One area is black and white and filled with fog and ghosts suspended in time, where a whispering voice begs you to free them and some of their still living comrades from being punished by the demons. There's a succubus who taunts you and teases you into labyrinthine puzzles and devious illusions, into psychedelic landscapes and bloody ballrooms, giggling as you're drawn ever further into what she considers a trap, and what may very well be. There's a crimson salt mine teeming with demons and cultists, toiling away under the watchful gaze of a Primarch who is willing to give you his sinful blessing, but only if you perform an act of betrayal, specifically, a very bloody betrayal. Meanwhile, amidst all of this, there's a series of obelisks with parts of a riddle written on each one that can lead to a great treasure, one which seems other adventurers around the map have tried several times to find and failed. Believe it or not, all of this is interconnected. Bits and pieces of each quest are sprinkled throughout smaller hubs necessary to explore and teleport through and expand upon in order to figure out which direction to head in, which pieces fit where. Uncannily, all of this works. All of it, mechanically, practically, intellectually, it all works. So much is going on at any given moment during Act 2 that I had to force myself to stop playing every now and again because it was literally exhausting. And then, after gathering the 5 Primarchs to taint your soul and allow you to pass to hell as a demon to face the Baron, blazing, brutal combat. Now I want to mention that up until this point, the combat has been fairly tough, but here, Jesus dick, here things get insane. It took careful quick saving to ensure I was getting through, as literally every corner turned saw stacks and waves of heavy foes that hit hard. And then, once we get to the Baron, in a boss fight that upended all of my expectations, the chaos is so much that I'm surprised I even made it through. The finale is fittingly, if not a little frustratingly, fitting for a game that leaned so hard and intentionally on focused, deep exploration, and is now at last cutting loose and flexing some heavy metal muscle. As the credits rolled, featuring a moment so batshit insane that I almost couldn't believe the implications, I felt accomplished, and I basked in the glow of it. I also felt drained, done, and disappointed somehow that I had to be done. I didn't want to be done. I was so drawn in and so invested in the experience of the game and the brilliant design that I didn't want to be done. Of course, like all games, everything comes to an end at some point, but Hedon Bloodrite's momentum of interconnectivity throughout sprawling hubs almost created the sensation that I was in a living world where I could stay for as long as I wanted. Something which I only last experienced with Skyrim. Hedon Bloodrite is just as immersive and massive, but with the immediacy of a last-ditch effort to save the world from being overrun by chaos and demons. The ending, while potentially teasing future installments in the series, is satisfying, and it sticks the landing. Now, of course, all this wouldn't feel so great or wonderful or endearing if the mechanics of the game didn't work well, and they do. I criticized the first game on a couple of points, for being too meandering here and there alongside loud and fast music choices, for being too dark at times, and for the combat feedback being off in places. For starters, I want to say that I never got any sense of meandering, which is saying something considering the scope of the game. Again, that mansion level, shit. Kids, I thought that was it. I thought I was in for Hedon 2, the constant wandering, but it never came close. As I searched across the hubs, I felt like a bloodhound on the hunt, nose to the ground, darting left and right. It was a thrill to wander, and that's partially due to the graphical design and the level layouts. The first Hedon was certainly no slouch in the graphical department, what with the hand-drawn art and fully realized fantasy world, and I described the first game as pushing GZ Doom engine to its limits. Well, imagine my surprise when I was traipsing through hell, and I popped open my auto map, and that, combined with the size of the level, combined with the depth of the graphical effects, actually made the frame rate drop a little. With such complex graphical elements in level design, you'd probably forgive developers, Zan, if they cut a few corners with textures and maps, but no, everything here is gorgeous and beautiful. And not only that, but there's a few areas where the game will present you with a certain aesthetic, only for the environment to shift and show you what the world really looks like beneath an illusion of beauty. 2 separate designs layered on top of each other. Developer Zan didn't have to go this hard, but just look at this. You've been watching this video and the footage this whole time, you can see this, right? And that's not even doing the game justice, because when you're playing it, you can stop and take a look around and take it all in. I can't even level enough praise at how fucking gorgeous this game is. With the diversity of environments, the process of concept to execution must have been hell. No pun intended. As for the lighting, well, the game starts up with a gamma adjustment so that the players can actually see everything better, which I greatly appreciated because I thought I was going blind sometimes with the first game based on how little I could see. And while the gamma slider helps, one thing I noticed was that it still didn't help as much as I wanted, so I went into the options and adjusted the gamma slider some more. But unfortunately, the settings didn't save that each time I did it, so whenever I started up the game again, I had to manually adjust the gamma each time. That was a bit of a pain, but I feel feel like that was more on GZ Doom's fault than the game's fault, so I'm giving it a pass, and it took up such a minimal amount of effort that I didn't really mind. To that extent, lighting and level design are a lot sharper. I rarely felt like needing to use the night vision goggles as much as I did in the first game, and there's really only 1 or 2 areas where it felt like that was a requirement anyway. Also, combat is much more solid this time out. The sprites still feel fairly small and difficult to track at times, but feedback on weapons was definitely easier to note. Enemies noticeably pause when getting hit by rapid-fire weapons, such as the spike gun, and the Hellclaw's fireballs have a splashing effect which makes it easy to tell that they're landing. Also, when I'm hitting things with my spike gun, there's a little bit more heft behind each spike that actually hits. A nice audio cue slipped in there. I don't feel like that was there in the first game, but if it was, it wasn't as noticeable. All the weapons make a comeback in Bloodrite and feel just as solid as before, but there's one new weapon to add to the roster this time out, and that's the pain gun.
Are you okay, Dad?
Yeah, just give me some water.
Jesus, Dad, you're so fucking embarrassing.
The pain gun is one of the most satisfying chain guns ever. Just ever. It operates on the same level as most chain guns and first-person shooters. Holding down primary fire unleashes a steady stream of hot lead, but only after the barrels briefly begin to wind up. However, you can hold down the right mouse button for an alt fire that starts shooting immediately. It just doesn't have the same stopping power and doesn't kill as quickly as the primary fire. But since the pain gun is belt-fed, there's no need to reload it. So you can hold down the reload key to start the barrel spinning and then hit the primary fire to launch into a spray of bullets and bedlam. The pain gun is fucking ridiculous. The first couple times you use it, the game wisely gives you swaths of enemies to clear out, grinning all the way. And what's great is that the spread of bullets isn't bad at a distance either, making the pain gun a decent long-range weapon as well. But it isn't so OP that you can cheese every encounter by holding down fire, because you'll still need to think tactically with a lot of enemies. All of our favorite fodder are back for Bloodrite, from cultists to Cerberus dogs to pit lords, but we got a few new faces this time around as well. Hellions are blue-skinned demon soldiers who look a lot like Zan and carry the pain guns. Gluttons are thick boy piggy demons that hold acid sacs in their stomach and throw them at you. Gargoyles zap you with lightning and zip around, and the Baron's priests have their mind flayer attacks, which can only be dodged if you break line of sight or back away fast enough. Each of these new enemies have their pros and cons. Like, the priests will split themselves into multiple forms, some of which are just illusions to trick you, so hitting them with the pain gun only results in multiple priests that are best taken down with something like the crush bow or the acid launcher. And there are multiple times where the enemies will come at you in diverse waves, forcing you to keep moving and think on your feet. Just like in Doom Eternal, if you're under attack in this game and you sit still for too long, you're going to die. Real fast and real often. Do yourself a favor and quick save anytime you think of it, especially on higher difficulty levels. It's the policy of the Ranger Report to play FPS games on the second highest difficulty setting, or whatever the equivalent of ultra violence would be depending on the game. I played through this on hardcore, so everything being thrown at me was extra painful, but never felt unfair. Chaotic? Yes. Rage-inducing? Only sometimes. But never unfair. Certainly the final 2 levels are so chaotic and furious and combat heavy with so many enemies that it was challenging and teeth gritting in ways that rival Viscera Fest. But even in the midst of me sometimes feeling a little helpless in the face of the challenges presented, I still didn't want to give up or nope out to come back later. The music here is again on point and thankfully never pairs any high BPM tracks with areas that require slow and methodical exploration. And some of these tracks wormed their way into my brain and were on loop while I was trying to sleep. Breathe Last and Axul and Alexander Brandon return as composers from the first game, with music that pairs perfectly with the level hubs, enhancing both the combat and the environments. But what I really want to highlight here is that this game is a marvel. I felt no wasted moments during my gameplay, no slog through the world, no puzzles felt obtuse, and no combat felt too punishing. Somehow the game's difficulty curve arcs in a perfect wave, guiding and leading the player forward without any hand-holding. I was drawn in completely, from start to finish. I felt empathy for the orcs. I felt connection and camaraderie with the various races, struggling against the Baron, against possible eradication. I wanted to explore the mystery of what was happening to Zan and what made her so unique and special. Something that's never clearly touched upon, but then again, I was fine with the fact that it didn't. Being two halves of two separate worlds, getting to see both worlds from her perspective, understanding what it meant for her to undergo the Bloodrite ritual and become more demonic while still being a true orc of the Iron Division, these things were all presented in a show don't tell manner that captured my interest and my care for the character. Actions can and do speak louder than words, and Zan's, both the half-blood and the developer, are resonant indeed. And let's not overlook another deft feat of development. Bloodrite is a full-fledged sequel, released as an update to the currently existing Hedon game. Now when you go to play Hedon, you get the option of starting up either the first game, again, now retitled Crystal Heart, or Bloodrite. And on top of that, for those who already owned Crystal Heart, Bloodrite was a free upgrade. 23 hours of gameplay delivered for free. An entire massive free game just because I'd already purchased the first game. And now, for those who have played neither, you get both games all rolled into one for less than 20 bucks. That, kids, is what we call a fucking steal. Hedon Bloodrite surpasses the first game in every way imaginable. It's bigger, wider, deeper, faster, louder, and presented with confidence and passionate talent. From beginning to end, Bloodrite is a game that demands your attention, holds it, and then returns it with interest. I'm giving this epic masterpiece a 10 out of 10. I am so fucking exhausted. You kids can stay up late if you want tonight. Maybe watch a movie, play some Smash Brothers, but I think it's time for me to hit the hay. The old man put some time into this one and it was well worth it. If you haven't given this one a shot, if you enjoy fantasy-themed shooters, if you enjoy Hexen-style shooters, if you enjoy PC gaming, period, full stop, you owe it to yourself to go purchase Hedon and try it for yourself. You won't be disappointed. Remember to turn out the lights when you're done, kids. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.